Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on the Master of International Forestry. My name is Shane Moore from the Faculty of Graduate Studies here at UBC, and it's really great to be able to welcome so many of you here today. Thanks so much for letting us know where you're listening from. We've got people here from Toronto, Boston, Pretoria, Uganda, Pal River in BC, Indonesia, India. So wherever you're listening from, welcome. It's really great to see you here today. If you haven't already, let us know where in the world you're listening from. We've got a really great session for you today. You're going to hear from our program director, you're going to hear from lecturers, alumni of the program, and we're going to give you a really good overview of the Masters of International Forestry and also give you some advice on how to apply if you're planning to do so. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're broadcasting today from the traditional, ancestral and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh, who are some of the First Nations of Canada. And during your time at UBC, you'll often hear us give land acknowledgements, and that's because UBC Vancouver is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam. And I know you'll be doing your research right now into UBC and the Faculty of Forestry, but I'd encourage you also to read more about the Musqueam, on whose territory UBC Vancouver is located. It's a real honour for us to be able to live here, to learn and to work on these lands. I also want to say a quick thank you to you. Thank you for considering UBC for your graduate studies and the Faculty of Forestry. UBC is really one of the top universities globally, well known for its research excellence, and it's consistently ranked among the top universities in the world. We're a very international university, and a university with a very strong graduate student community. So if you join UBC, you'll be one of over 10,000 graduate students on our UBC Vancouver campus. We have more than 300 different graduate degree programs, and we really do invest in our graduate student community, in the facilities, and especially in the research that's happening. UBC's Faculty of Forestry is one of 12 faculties at UBC Vancouver. It's one of the top forestry faculties in the world, and a big part of that is because of the research that's happening, some really cutting edge research that's being done by our professors, and you'll be learning about that, so that research will impact the learning that you do in the classroom. We have really amazing facilities. You can see the picture here in the top left of our forestry faculty building, and we also have research forests, and an excellent community here within the Faculty of Forestry. One thing that I hear again and again when I speak to forestry students is the sense of community that they have within their programs and also within the wider faculty. So you'll be stepping into a really exciting faculty and a really exciting community. So that's all for me for the moment. I will just say that one of the things we want to do today is answer your questions. So if you do have any questions, please let us know in the Q&A. We're going to turn the chat off for now, but you can ask us questions using the Q&A. You can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that somebody else has posted and you really want to hear the answer to that, make sure that you upvote that question, and we're going to answer your questions today. But without further ado, let's hear a bit more about the program, and let me pass it over now to Peter for the next steps. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Shane, and really great to see how many people are joining from looks like all corners of the world. So great to be with you here today. I've been with this program now. I'm in my second year, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be an instructor with this program. It really fits just perfectly with my background, as well as the way that we connect together as the multiple instructors that are responsible for delivering this program. It's a 12-month program. It goes very quickly. It's intensive. And we have an approach to the program that really emphasizes integration. So you may be doing 7 different courses during the year, but there's cross-cutting themes that kind of wind it all together. So that's 2 terms of courses from September through to April, with a bit of a break for the holidays in December. And overall, what the common theme throughout the entire program is looking at all the ways in which forestry and forests become an international issue, an issue of international concern. Next slide. So how do forests and forestry become an issue of international concern? For myself, I teach 3 of these courses you can see on the left there. Part of that looks at international forest governance and policy. We're looking at ways in which different countries implement our international commitments, ways in which different countries have tackled the issue of how to improve forest outcomes on the ground. Another course I teach, International Forestry Institutions, Diplomacy and Negotiations, is a really, really fun course where we get right into how international agreements and treaties are negotiated and implemented, from climate change to biodiversity, human rights and indigenous rights negotiations. And we do a lot of simulations and activities around that. Lastly, another course I teach, Natural Resource Economics and Environmental Financing. We get into the nitty-gritty of money and how money is used to guide different outcomes, payment for ecosystem services, how to write a convincing grant proposal, all things financial. We have another focus. Dr. Janet Balkin teaches social, community, indigenous forestry from the perspective of Global South, as well as indigenous peoples in developed countries like Canada and their intersection with forestry and forest conservation. Very closely related to that is 2 courses taught by Dr. Terry Sunderland here on natural resources planning, looking at sort of a landscape level approach to planning and understanding how we approach forestry and forest, both conservation, management, and I find that a very fascinating perspective and lens to adopt. Forest and Society takes a step back, and we really try to consider the bigger picture of how internationally we relate to the world's forests. And we do a real tour de force of around the world, dropping in on different parts of the world to understand this evolving relationship between society and the world's forests. This is one of the courses where the international nature of the student body, particularly this current cohort, we found it just really fascinating to have in the class 12 different countries represented, and we can really quickly do a tour of how these issues we're talking about from an academic perspective, how they're playing out right now based on lived experience. Finally, we have Forest Business Enterprise. And this is a very focused course which tries to give students experience in running their own business, being entrepreneurial. What is it like to try to establish and run your own business that's related to forest business enterprise? And we do sort of a Dragon's Den style pitch where the students are expected to pitch their idea for a company that's related to forests, forestry, non-timber forest products, ecotourism, and through back and forth, we kind of question and push back on trying to establish what is the economic viability of that business. So as you can see, these are pretty far-ranging courses, but they're all connected. And we like to think of it as a big puzzle, and each one of these courses is a piece of that puzzle. And melding it all together are guest lectures on a weekly basis. We bring in people from the practitioner community that are working in this field to illustrate and bring color to some of the issues we're dealing with. We have professional development seminars where we try to really encourage people to polish and develop their professional profile and to enter into that network, that international network, so that you are ready for the next step in your career after the program. And everyone's favorite part is the field trips. And there's several of these throughout the year, some local and some further afield. And with that, I'm going to pass that over. Oh, sorry, one more slide. We encourage applications from diverse backgrounds. We come from a diverse set of backgrounds ourselves as instructors, from a more sort of ecological side through to more political science and international relations when it comes to looking at, some of these international agreements and how international governance happens. So I think that's a real strength of the program, that we very deliberately cross these disciplines to looking at how they can complement each other. And we look for that as well in terms of undergraduate degrees. We have a really keen interest to see our students go on to lead interesting and diverse careers. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, about students that have gone on to do some really interesting things. But we are looking for people that are interested in going on into international forestry. And there's many different ways that can look, including working for the NGO sector, non-government organizations, working for intergovernmental organizations such as the United Nations and its associated agencies, government, both local. We have people that have gone on to work for the BC government, but also federal, as well as beyond in areas outside of Canada. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Sunderland.
Thank you, Peter. And just to echo Peter's words, it's a pleasure to be here this morning, and just seeing the diversity of people who have tapped in today from all over the world, which is fantastic. And exactly our intention is attracting a wide range of geographies into our program. And as Peter said, this year our cohort, we've been blessed with 12 nationalities, 16 students, and it's really energizing to be in class at the moment. There's so much interesting debate, people coming from different backgrounds, and that's really the strength of the program overall. So a bit of background on me. I've been working in international forestry for about 30 years. I've only been at UBC about 6 years. I've taught on this program, natural resource planning, just taken up Forest and Society. But Peter and I have been running the course now. This is our second year. And we're shifting the emphasis, putting the international into the Masters of International Forestry. And this is the first year that we'll be undertaking an international field trip instead of 2 domestic field trips. And this year we'll be going to Costa Rica to visit CATIE, which is a Spanish acronym for the Center of Agriculture and Forestry Research. It's a tertiary education facility. And they're going to be arranging field trips, basically focusing on forestry issues that we deal with in class, non-timber forest products, the tension between agriculture and forest conservation, payments for environmental services, wildlife management, etc. And this is the first year we've actually done this trip, and so we're very excited to take the current cohort to Costa Rica. And next slide, please. And during the time that we'll be there, there'll be students from other universities, the University of Guelph, and also the students at CATIE itself. So we'll have a fantastic opportunity to cross-pollinate with students from other disciplines, other nationalities, and really get embedded in the Latin American educational sphere. CATIE has students from all over Central and South America, and that's a bit of a gap, if you like, in our cohort recruitment process at the moment. So we're very excited to be doing that trip in February next year. Next slide, please. So as Peter mentioned, an important part of the course is placements, internships primarily, and directed studies. So there are 2 routes that students can take here. If students are particularly interested in research pathway, we can link them with professors or institutions that require a specific research product, so a thesis type approach. or we can also organize and help organize international placements and also domestic placements, and Peter will talk about that in the next slide. But essentially, this year or last year, we had two new placement institutions, Center for International Forestry Research and the World Agroforestry Center, based in Nairobi, Kenya, hosted two of our students who worked on curriculum development, looking at restoration training with partner universities in Malawi, Ghana, and Rwanda. And we had one student work with the Global Landscapes Forum, which is a huge initiative that has massive outreach. And their Youth in Landscapes program was basically looking at various restoration schemes across the tropics, led by civil society organizations, and did a really nice review of the pitfalls and the perils, if you like, of restoration programs, but also the benefits as well. And at this stage, I'd like to bring in Levin, who actually attended or went to City Photograph in Nairobi, just to talk a little bit about his work and his experience and how it's led to further engagement. Levin.
Yeah, thanks, Sari. Yeah, as mentioned, so my placement took place at C4 eCraft, based in Nairobi, Kenya. And so my placement was focusing on curriculum development. And more specifically, I was focusing on a module that was focusing on the design and the implementation of forest landscape restoration initiatives throughout Rwanda. So what that looked like for me is I spent the month of July in Rwanda, going from different field sites across the country and just assessing different landscapes and what different interventions would be applicable to those landscapes, and just going through that with a cohort of students that had been selected for that module. And that, yeah, very broadly speaking, that's what I was doing for the month of July while I was there. And that has led to my work right now, which I'm continuing to support the Pan-African restoration education. And right now I'm developing these high-level course guides to then support the implementing institutions as they go forward and try to implement these different modules. So that's where I'm at right now. It's been incredibly fun.
Thanks, Levin. Next slide, please. And I think I hand over to Peter again.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Terry. We had the good fortune of having connections with two really interesting organizations that we set internships up at. CanopyPlanet.org is an organization that I've worked for in the past, and they track supply chains internationally. They track the supply chains of over 700 brands representing over $1 billion in commerce. And they work with those companies in a collaborative way to look at their supply chains and look at the impact of their supply chains and when it comes to forests. And they look at eliminating ancient and endangered forests and forests harvested in violation of indigenous rights. They want to remove those sources out of the supply chains. So we had one of our students go in there and participate in a real deep dive research effort that contributed to finding out where do some of these big brands from Amazon to Walmart to The Gap, looking at all of the ways they source materials all over the world and what ultimately lies at the end of that supply chain. So that was our intern or our student, Kira Lin, who participated in that and apparently did a really, really great job. Secondly, Indu4, one of the world's biggest sort of international forest consultancies, originally based in Finland, but I think now they have offices all over the world. They really focus on services such as forest certification, compliance with regulations such as the EU deforestation regulation, which is a big controversial issue right now. They took on one of our MIF students, Putra Daskian from Indonesia, and had him providing some of these consulting services. And he was immediately brought into about 6 different projects, even over the course of 3 months. And then they flew him down to Colorado for their sort of annual retreat, and he got really brought on board. So that was really exciting to see. Even as it is an internship, they very quickly can become part of the core work of these organizations. I will pass it back. Thank you. Oh, maybe I'll continue to narrate. Here we have some great examples of some of our field trips. On the left, a field trip we do every year to Squamish, and looking at the First Nations run logging that's happening up in Squamish, about an hour north of Vancouver. This year we did the equivalent trip to Seashelt, which is a ferry ride away, but also on the mainland, and we looked at community-based forest management there. On that far right, you can see an ancient old-growth forest on Mears Island, which is part of our field trip to Tofino. In the center top, we can see, this is a typical round table discussion or circled up discussion with our current cohort, and we have our past MIF student Putra Daskian, I just mentioned, coming in to talk along with Levin about their internship experience. At the bottom left, you can see there's Terry talking to our cohort after we brought them to a major conference at the Canadian Institute of Forestry. In the center, you can see our two MIFs at the Geneva Palais des Nations at the UN. Next slide. Here's a few examples of guest speakers on the bottom. Friend of MIF, the Nerdy About Nature, Ross Reed. I don't know if anybody follows Nerdy About Nature. I highly recommend his podcast, if a very popular podcast. He was talking to us about forest restoration, stream restoration on Vancouver Island. And we've got Dr. Andrew Wardell, and he came in to give a guest lecture both last year and this year. And this would be an example of some of the international caliber of speakers that we have in our guest lecture series. We really emphasize boosting students' ability to do public presentations and public speaking in general. So here we can see in the top a couple of students presenting, including Chen-Ming Wei, who is the president of the International Forestry Students Association at UBC, or IFSA. Again, this was a student-run club, and they held a conference on their own initiative on climate change and forests at the end of the term, which was fantastic. Maybe I'll pass this over to Terry. Terry, would you like to speak to admission requirements, or?
I think this is Rebecca.
Yeah.
This is Rebecca. Oh, six. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, so in the upcoming slides, I'll be going over our general admission requirements. So for MIF, while degrees in forestry, conservation, or environmental sciences are preferred, we welcome students from diverse academic backgrounds for the MIF program, as the other program coordinators mentioned. So our admission committees take a holistic approach, considering other elements of your application, such as your statement of intent, professional experience, and references. So I think it's very important to express your genuine interest in the program and your aspirations for a career in international forestry. For GPA requirement, we require a minimum bachelor's degree equivalent to a 4-year program with a minimum average of B+ in senior level courses, if your credential is from North American institutions. So that's 76% or 3.3 on a 4.0 scale in 3 to 400 level. For international credentials, we will assess your overall GPA to ensure it meets the B+ standard. You'll find the comprehensive information on the general requirements for international credentials by country on the UBC Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies website. And I will share the link to the list of countries in the chat box for your reference shortly. For your English language proficiency, if your institution's primary language of instruction is not English and your degree was not taught in English, we will be asking you to provide the English language proficiency test scores. Examples of acceptable ELP test scores are TOEFL, IELTS, KILE, and PTE. But with TOEFL and IELTS being the most commonly submitted, the minimum TOEFL score required for MIF is 100, with reading 23, writing 24, listening 23, and speaking 22. For IELTS, you need a minimum overall band score of 7, with at least 6.5 in each component of the academic test. It's not the general test. Next slide, please. So how to apply? So first step is to complete the online application and pay the application fee. You can access our online application portal from 2 locations. One is through the forestry website or the Faculty of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies webpage. So on our MIF Forestry webpage, you can click the How to Apply button located at the very top. And if you go to the page under the application procedure, you'll find the Apply Online button, which leads you to the application portal page. And here, you'll complete your application and pay the application fee. Please note that your application is only submitted once you pay for the application fee. And after paying for your application fee, your referees will be receiving the link to submit their reference online. And this is only triggered after you pay for the application. And I recommend to submit your application as soon as possible, so it allows your referees to have sufficient time to submit their reference letters. For those who are wondering about fee waivers for application, those application fee waivers are offered to the students whose citizenship and their residential address are located in one of the world's least developed countries declared by UN. The next one is, as part of your application, you need to list all post-secondary institutions you've attended and upload scanned transcripts for each entry. So if you have taken courses as a non-degree or exchange student, you still need to include those institutions and their transcripts. And then the reference, you'll need to provide 3 references, with at least 1 being academic. And when entering your referee's contact info, please ensure you have their email address from private domains. Free accounts like Gmail, Hotmail, or Yahoo will not trigger the system to send them a unique link to online reference submission page. But it's okay if your referee doesn't have a private domain. They can steal their physical reference letters via post, and the instructions on how to mail reference letter will be provided to your referee. The deadline for the reference is February 25th, so it's slightly later than the actual application deadline, which is February 15th. And for English language proficient test results, as mentioned before, if your degree was not delivered in English, you must include your ELP test results as part of your application. And yes, last and most importantly, ensure you submit your supporting documents, including MIF questionnaire, letter of intent, and your resume. This is an opportunity to provide additional insights about yourself and your professional background. So in your statement of intent, clearly express your reasons for wanting to join the program and what you want to achieve and your dedication to the field. This part of your application is crucial, I think, for creating a strong and compelling case. So make sure you articulate your goals and how you plan to utilize your learning in international forestry. Next slide, please. So our admission coordinators host these group advising sessions. We have set dates for our group advising. So check our website and sign up for these advising session if you still have questions to ask after this info session. And yeah, please visit our website, and we do have very good information on our forestry website as well. And sign up for our mailing list to keep up to date about upcoming events, programming opportunities, and important deadlines. Lastly, I wanted to provide some information about the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship Program. So if you are planning to apply for the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, the deadline is today by midnight in Pacific time. So if you are MCF prospects, you must apply through the MCF program first. And if you are offered an invitation to apply for the UBC Forestry program, and that typically happens in the end of this year, and that is the time you apply for MIF. So first MCF application and then to our program. And yeah, that's all from me. And I hope the information was helpful. Good luck with your application.
Thanks, Rebecca. That was great, really detailed info. Thanks so much, and thanks to the whole team. That was a great overview of the MIF. We've had some really great questions in already, and I can see the team has been typing some of the answers, which is awesome. But let's move into the Q&A part of the session now, where we can talk more and answer more of your questions. Let me actually stop sharing the presentation so you can see us a bit better, and let me have a look, see your questions here. The first question, or most popular question at the moment, from Gayatri. And I guess if we can ask the panelists their sort of views on this, is the forestry industry predominantly male driven, or do women face specific challenges when pursuing a degree in forestry? I mean, many of you have been involved in the industry for years now. What is your experiences? What are your perspectives on that?
Do you want us to answer verbally?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Yeah, I can say something to that, actually. There's a fascinating series of images of graduating students across UBC for the last 70 years through the building. And you can see the gender changes over the last, certainly the 10 to 20 years. And the faculty now, I think, is about 62% female students, 38% male. I run a research lab of about 14 students, and most of my graduate students are female, so 12 to 2. The gender balance is kind of skewed in the other way, but it's really reflective of how forestry has changed from that production function into the international, social, more economic side of understanding how forestry reacts, and it sort of links in very neatly with what Peter said about forests and society, about how forests contribute to society in so many different ways. And that's reflective of different disciplines and different backgrounds coming into forestry. And that's really the strength of the faculty right now. So there's no particular hindrance to being a woman in forestry at all. And in fact, we're one of the most gender representative faculties, I think, on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Terry. That's great. Did anyone else have anything to add on that one? That's a great question, I thought.
I would just add, we do have a gender balance within MIF of two instructors, Terry and I, from the male side, and two, Dr. Jeanette Balkan and Elaine Williamson. And that even as we have two males represented here, from the just to say that we do have a bit of a balance there. We did analysis of the 26 guest speakers we had in last year. About 60% were women. So it's something that we take very seriously, and we really enjoy bringing that diversity of views into the classroom. I believe it's December 5th. We're going to be having a guest lecture that will be specifically addressing this issue of gender and forestry. So I really encourage you all to follow us on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. I will be putting out a link to join for that. And if that would be a good example, if you want to get a sneak preview of what kind of guest lecture we bring in to the program.
That's awesome. That's really great. Maybe I can just bring Levin in as well, just to talk more broadly about your cohort and your group. Like, how is diversity in that cohort in your class? Was it quite international? How was the sort of male-female split in your cohort?
Yeah, so looking at the male-female split, I think it was predominantly female, or at least fairly even. I'm trying to remember, I think there were 13, so I think definitely seemed as though there were more females or more women. And in looking at diversity, yeah, it was fairly diverse. A lot of representation from Asian countries, which was always good. And then 3 Canadians. So yeah, it's a bit of a smaller cohort, so obviously not as diverse in that, but yeah, no, it was quite diverse overall. And going back to diversity in forestry, looking at the team that I work with at C4 Recraft, I'm the only male in the team, so it's yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's really great. And just thinking, I really liked like Terry's description of how the composition of the graduating classes year on year has changed. That's a really great visual example of diversity. So that's great. Thank you all for those answers. Let's have a look. Sorry.
Can I just add to that quickly?
Yeah.
One of the reasons we've had such a diverse cohort this year is because we have scholarships from the MasterCard Foundation for African scholars. So we have 4 different nationalities from Africa represented in the current cohort as well. And that program continues for the next 10 years. So we have a guaranteed 7-8 places on the MIF for African scholars. So that brings an enormous amount of diversity into the program, which is very welcome.
Yeah, that is huge. That is really exciting to hear. That's amazing. Excellent. Let's see what else we have here. Aishish asks, would French language increase admissions chances for international students getting into UBC? Rebecca, have you got any thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, no. We don't look at the French language test scores.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you have that language ability, and for sure, like, I think you need to wrap it in and mention it in your application. But you would still need to take an English language proficiency test if your degree was not taught in English. Let's see. You guys have done a great job of answering a lot of these questions in the chat. But I'm just wondering whether we could talk through some of them as well, just for the recording, and just to kind of open up some of these topics a little bit more and hear more. I know, Terry, you answered the question about job opportunities following this degree. Would you mind sort of talking a little bit more of that? On that, sort of some of the examples of the jobs that our graduates are going into?
Sure. It's manyfold, actually. Some are actually involved in international forestry, so working overseas. There are a number of students who work with international organizations in Indonesia, in India, and other countries. Peter and I have yet to get to fully grips with the 10 years of the MIF where people are placed. We're doing an alumni sort of review at the moment, and we'll have more data on that. But also, obviously, BC is also a huge hub for consultancy companies, NGOs, civil society. Many of our students working in those institutions. And there was a student I can particularly think of who started with Hatfield Consulting and is now running their entire Indonesia operation. And he was a particular standout in terms of quick career progressions and development. And of course, from the research side, that many students go into further education, PhDs in particular. There's a number of students here currently in the faculty that are former MIF students. So there's a range of different career options and geography that people are focused on. And yeah, as I say, once we've done this full alumni review, we'll have far more actually hard data on where people are.
That'll be great. And it feels like there's a good sort of network out there that our students and graduates can tap into. Has that, I mean, Levin, I can see you nodding there. Is that something that you've noticed in terms of that alumni network? And have you kept contact with colleagues from forestry since you've graduated?
Yeah, no, I've definitely kept contact with some people from our cohort, and even previous cohorts. They've reached out like via LinkedIn and whatnot, and email, and just keeping in contact as to what they're doing, what I'm doing. So it's very helpful.
That's great.
That's
awesome.
one thing I might just build on. Something that Terry and I are really trying to encourage is a bit of an alumni culture. So we have a way to sort of keep in touch with people following graduation. We've have sort of ongoing support for career development and a job posting board. One of our students, former students, just got a job with a local First Nations based on that alumni support. We really encourage those students to come back and to talk about their experience, which is great for just providing a bit more sort of real life experience in the classroom of what's going on. Allows us to kind of retool our thinking about what kind of skills are required, what kind of jobs are out there, and what do they need. So yeah, that culture of alumni and alumni support into their next step of their career is a big part of what we do.
That's great. Yeah, no, really exciting to hear that. Just that idea of community, I think keeps coming up for me as well. I think because of the size of the program, size of the faculty, like it feels like people can really reach out easily and connect with each other. That's really nice to hear. I know, Rebecca, you've just answered this one, but maybe we could just bring it back up because I think it's a good question from Rayman, who was just explaining that they graduated about 6 years ago. They had not a great GPA, they say, but they have been developing experience in forest carbon projects development space in South Africa and in the Middle East, so they seem to have got some good experience there. When you're reviewing applications, I mean, do you look at that professional experience, and can that help somebody who might have a lower GPA if they have good experience? Would anyone be able to talk to that in terms of how you view that experience, how you'd value work experience in the application?
Yeah, if I may. So the MIF and all of our professional master's courses were designed not only for recent graduates, but also mid-career professionals who wish to change careers. And so we take into account previous lives, basically, and maturity, and not necessarily a prerequisite in terms of having a great understanding of forestry, but coming to the program with enthusiasm and interest and dynamism and the willingness to learn about a new topic. And so, obviously we take in the traditional people who've gone through forestry education, but also people who have got changing careers. In our current cohort, we have somebody who was a business professional and ran cafes and other entertainment media. And he did a course in sustainability, I think a master's degree in sustainability in Austria. But traditionally, if you look at his background, you think, oh, well, he's not a forestry student, but actually he brings a very different mindset and world experience to the cohort, which is very valuable. And he's a fantastic addition to the program. And so we're very flexible on bringing into account basically life experience. And also you get a sense from people's motivation letters, their potential dedication to the program. And that's something also we take into account. I don't know, Peter, do you want to add something to that?
I would just build on that by saying we're also very keenly interested in your future. So talk to us about what you need this degree in order to do. What are you looking to get into, pivot to, move on from here? We love to see an application, some true reflection that you understand the courses. You've made a connection to that substance in the courses and how you see this fitting into the career you want to get into. We want to see a genuine interest and motivation that is linked to international forestry. And because that can mean many things to many people, we want to hear about what your interpretation of international forestry is, how you see this fitting into your career. We love reading those statements.
That's great advice. Yeah, the statement of interest, the letter of intent, is such an important part of the application. That's really interesting. I think, yeah, explaining why you've chosen this particular program, why you've chosen UBC, and where you want to go with it. I think that's so important. Levin, if I can bring you back in again, do you have any memories of putting together your MIF application? Any tips on putting together a strong application?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I really remember focusing on was the letter of intent. I think that was where I put all of my time into, what I wanted the degree for, and going from there. That's what I remember from the process.
Yeah, that's a good advice. That's great. And yeah, what a lot of people don't realize as well is it's okay to get other people to read your letter of intent. So if you're working on it, share it with a friend, share it with a current graduate student if you know anyone who can take a second look and give you some feedback on your letter as you write it. And you're not going to write your letter of intent in an afternoon. It's going to take a few iterations. So when you're putting together your application, give yourself time to write a really strong letter of intent. As Peter mentioned, it's so important to the application. Okay, a couple of other questions here. One from Winnie, who did a Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy Administration and has experience in climate change programs and activities. It's really hard to give a specific answer on an individual application, but broadly speaking, would Winnie qualify to apply? I mean, would we accept an application from someone with that kind of background?
Eric, do you want to address that?
Yeah, yes. I mean, every application is taken on merit, and every application is considered on an individual basis. So we would need to see the entire package, basically. That profile looks certainly suitable for the MIF program. So yes, go ahead and apply.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, and I think one of the great things about many of the forestry programs is they do just bring in such a diverse group of candidates in terms of academic backgrounds as well. So, and remember, you can book an advising appointment, as Rebecca mentioned. So if you're not sure about your application, you can always reach out to the team or book an advising appointment as well. Another question here from Jameson, and I think what Jameson's asking is, can they defer their entry? So assuming they're selected for the 2025 entrance, could they use the same process the following year? Maybe Jameson, I hope I'm correct. I'm correct in saying is that they're asking, can they defer their entry for a year? Is that something that ever happens? Is that an option for people?
Deferral is not offered. They would have to reapply for the next intake.
Good to know. Great. So you can't defer, but you can simply reapply next time. Good to know. That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Suman asks about sort of scholarships offered by colleges to study bachelors in Canada. So I don't know if we talk about colleges that would offer scholarships. Maybe I can just ask the team. Do you have any scholarships? We touched on the MasterCard one, but are there any other scholarships? And I also, if I may add, there was a question earlier about doing sort of a TA role. Is there even time to do that sort of extracurricular work in the program, or is it too intense?
Just for the economics of it, a TA appointment would nowhere near cover the tuition of either a domestic or international student. Supplementary income, of course, yeah, that's fine. But yes, you raised a really important point. Most of the MIF students don't have the time available to do any real deeply committed GRA or TA appointments. And we actively discourage it, to be honest.
That's great. And then as well as the MasterCard scholarships, are there any other scholarships through the program that one might be able to get, like an entrance or scholarships during the program to which they could apply?
At present, no, but it's something that Peter and I are working on. We had some discussions with the Bezos Foundation, which unfortunately came to nothing. But we're actively seeking maybe philanthropic sources of scholarships, and we are in negotiation and discussions with the dean to maybe establish 1 or 2 scholarships for Latin American students. Latin America, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge gap basically in our cohort representation, and has traditionally been so. And we would like to attract high quality Latin American scholars who would then act as an ambassadorial role for the program, as many of our African students are doing at the moment, and our Asian students traditionally in the past. So it's something we're looking into, and we've done a comparator analysis of similar courses around North America and Europe, and they may be expensive, but many of them, like Yale and others, do have scholarship programs which are very attractive. So it's something that we're working on very assiduously, let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And of course, you know, for programs like this that are professionally orientated, that are shorter in length, you know, it's not as common to see scholarships, particularly at UBC, scholarships or stipends. You would see more of them in research-based programs, but the whole focus of this program is really to get you ready to return to the workforce quickly, you know, in a year or so. So although it is an investment, it's an investment in yourself, and you'll be back in your career, back in your professional life, just after a year or so, having hopefully taken a big step up after the program. Great question. And Georgina's just putting a shout out there for her application. So you'll have to remember that name, Terry.
Yes.
Excellent. So really great questions, everyone. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes to go. So if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to let us know. I just had a question for Levin. I always find it really insightful to have a graduate or a current student in these sessions. And Levin, maybe you could, if you take a step back and remember, like how was it, you know, during the program when you were at UBC Vancouver? What did an average day, average week look like? What you know, how give us some insight into what it was like to be a student in the program.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try and remember. Yeah, I mean, semester wise, completely different, because last year we had courses that were different every day, whereas in the second semester we were following a block process. So very different day to days. The first semester was a lot more relaxed in terms of workload and intensity, I would say, because that's that block format. You just get hit with assignment. But I don't believe that's the format anymore, so I don't think that is anything to worry about. No, it was it was very enjoyable, I have to say. I really enjoyed the scope of all the classes and how they are interlinked, and you piece it all together at the very end. There's some points you kind of are wondering how it's all connected, but then at the end, when you understand it all, you kind of see why it's taught in the way it's taught in the order it is. So yeah, looking back at it, it was very enjoyable. Sometimes it was stressful, but once you get past that, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. And was it, sorry, Levin, go on.
I was just going to say, I don't have a traditional forestry background. I was environmental science, so similar enough, but didn't have any specific education in forestry. So I was kind of nervous going into it, but it all worked out.
Yeah, for sure. It was. And how were the assignments? Was it more individual or group based? How was it in terms of delivering on the assignments?
I would say it was fairly even in terms of the portion of assignments of group and individual. There were lots of group assignments that were longer term, so you'd be working on them throughout the course. And then you'd get some shorter individual assignments. And then there were quizzes and whatnot that would pop up. Mm-hmm. Once again, very different that first semester to the second semester, what you're going to experience in terms of assignments and assessments. So, but yeah, large variety, lots of presentations, which is great for someone like me who is not a great public speaker. So I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect. Yeah, you see a lot of different assessments, which is great.
Amazing. And your placement as well. How did that sort of come about? And I mean, you mentioned that you felt a little bit nervous arriving in the program. How was it, going out to Rwanda? Like how was that whole experience for you? You must have had some pretty great learnings from it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Took a while to figure out the whole process of getting the internship, but thankfully through the connections, we made it work and was able to get to Nairobi. And then spent just over the first month at the headquarters in Nairobi, kind of preparing for the project and getting the background information and everything I need to know for the project to then go into the field for that month. And I was, extremely fortunate to be able to join the team and be able to see pretty much not all of Rwanda, but a good portion of Rwanda since it's a small country. Learned a lot as we went along, as you do when you're in the field compared to in the classroom. It was also really interesting to kind of make the ties from what was taught earlier in the course components to the field. So I thought that was very valuable.
Yeah, that must be amazing to be able to take what you've learned in the classroom and put it into practice in the field. That's amazing. That's great. Excellent. So let's see. I don't think we've got any more questions coming through at the moment, but we've got about sort of 3 or 4 minutes to go. Maybe I can throw it back to the team. If you've got any sort of final thoughts, any final bits of advice on the application, anything to watch out for or to do. Would anyone like to jump in and give any final thoughts or bits of advice? Terry?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I seem to have lost my video. I'm not quite sure what's happened. It's not working. Yes, a couple of things. I forgot to mention when I mentioned the International Forestry course, the field trip rather to Costa Rica, that will be covered by the tuition fees. That's an agreement we've made with the dean. So make it clear that this is not the expense of students. This is covered completely by the program. So I just want to reiterate that. And I'd just like to reinforce the importance of the letter of intent. I think Peter, really hit the spot with when you send a letter of intent, make sure that you contextualize your background and what the course will do to take you into the future. And we get many applications that we wade through. And don't just tell us you're interested in nature. It needs to be more specific. It needs to be very directed at what your career aspirations are and how this course fits and contributes to those aspirations, and be really thoughtful in the way that you construct that letter, because we're going to be reading a couple of hundred of these, and we need those to stand out, and just spend some time and really focus on that process.
Great advice. That's really good. Peter, did you have anything?
No, just I really encourage applicants to take a good look at the courses, and also feel free to reach out to myself or Terry directly if you have any further questions. We're pretty open to chatting about if you want any further details. Happy to speak to it. And yeah, other than that, I think that I encourage you all to follow us on social media, another plug, because that will give you a sense of week to week some of the things that we do, including field trips, but also in-class negotiations that are going to be happening right now. Some of the sort of more practical side of nuts and bolts of the program. Always happy to answer questions around that, so please reach out.
That's amazing. That's great. I see there was just one more question from Georgina, just about the application fee waiver. There is application fee waivers if you're applying from one of the 50 least developed countries as identified by the United Nations. I don't have the link at the moment to hand. I don't know if you do, Rebecca, but if you can see that on the grad.ubc.ca website, in the application section, you can read more. That's the only sort of fee waiver that we have at the moment. But do check that out on our website. Amazing. I just want to say a really big thank you to the team, to Terry, Peter, Levin, Rebecca, Sonia for the the organization of everything. It's been a really great session, and thank you everyone for joining, and don't forget to be in touch with us, and good luck, of course, with your applications. So we'll wrap things up for today. Thanks again, everyone, for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you at UBC Vancouver soon. But we'll say goodbye for now. Thanks, everyone.